Alright, well, ran through 3 rounds already fairly quickly. A lot of pieces being played down here in the Deep South. It looks like Douglas has the ability to trigger a poll there from how people have been reacting. On the other hand, Lincoln's been kind of sneaking forces up into the Northeast, and he actually has one for there as well, which is kind of a interesting situation. While everybody's devoted to one area, someone can kind of pad their resources and not look as dangerous. Lincoln doesn't look like he's doing terribly well in this game, so people are a little less worried about him. Locking up Texas, not a huge deal, but if the Northern Democrats get a power base in the South and they maintain this kind of strength in the Midwest, that's a scary combination, and the Southerners certainly can't allow it if they can help it. So, in terms of this is where they get their power and their cards help them. So it would kind of hurt if if a couple of those got locked out on them. So the fighting's gotten tough enough. This constant ping pong back and forth. Douglas doesn't have a card he wants to waste again. He spent his personal appearance to stop this action, which was to place, again, a push ahead for the Constitutional Unionists in Georgia. Georgia isn't absolutely key to Douglas's strategy, but he's invested so much in it he can't turn back. So he's preventing that. He's only got one of these personal appearances, but he's got another one sitting in his hand, which is one reason he did it. And now he's going to play that regional polling in the lower South, and we'll see what happens there, because I think, well, for one thing, he's going to lock down Georgia. But I think there's some other interesting stuff. This is going to really swing things in favor of the Southern Democrats instead of the Constitutional Unionists. So yeah, everything's decided with the exception of South Carolina, which can't be locked. And we see the Southern Democrats holding 30 of the electoral votes. The Unionists only holding 9, and 14 up here for the Northern Democrats. This worked out very well for the Northern Democrats. They had hopes of getting another state in here, but all this fighting meant that everything's locked down now. So now the South is over. I mean, it really is, except for the fight for South Carolina when it happens, which means things are going to move elsewhere. Now, one thing that's not covered on the cards, but is in the rules, is that there's an automatic reshuffle when there's a regional poll that takes effect. It kind of saddens me that's not somehow marked on the cards. They also could have done a better job of maybe marking reshuffles on cards rather than just having you have to read the text on all of them. But either way. All right, onward. We've got the Republicans to go. Okay, so on these little cards I found, basically Lincoln triggered off the Northeastern one. He realized, I'm not going to get New York. I'm not going to be able to lock it down. He knew that before, but kind of erred along those lines. But he wants to lock down what he's got because he's not going to gain anything else. He just played for an extra turn that he didn't have to. But it turns out Nevada is part of the Pacific Northwest, and Kansas is part of the Midwest, not the Upper South that it's adjacent to. This may be in a list in the rules of the different sections, but it's not really identified easily on the board. And it is identified well on those cards, although not perfectly, because it's not color-coded. They're color-coded along with the Pacific West. But anyway, I'll take care of the voting in the Northeast and see how that falls out. And now you start to see some of these getting locked down, too, with New Hampshire, Vermont, Connecticut, Massachusetts, all falling permanently to someone or another. Yeah, how good a pickup by Lincoln? Well, he picked up 6. Nobody else got anywhere near that, but the Southern Democrats got 3 up there, which is kind of a, wow, that's not likely to happen. Okay, so, but point-wise, 36 and 16, 40, 52 electoral votes there versus 19, 29, 36. 14 only here for the Unionists, and 22-26 for the Northern Democrats. So Lincoln's got the momentum now, which was one of his kind of goals in this, because that gives him more cards for options. Of course, you have to discard most of your cards, or down to 5 cards from that. All right, well, on to the last round. I don't think there's going to be another polling coming in. Nobody had any deflections for the polls. I don't know why. Somebody threw one away, at least. I believe Douglas did. He wouldn't have had the extra cards for it. Okay, the turn winds down, and I got to figure out, well, we essentially did already what the momentum is. I just got to show it. But Douglas played a speaking tour that gives him another pip, another free, another action to stomp on somebody else, basically. They can also be used for other reasons, but the biggest is to stop someone from doing something terrible to your plans. They did it over here to allow them to seal Georgia up, but I'm not sure how much it helped, because the Southern Democrats probably gained more from it than Douglas actually did, with all that fighting going on. All right, well, I guess I'll score the momentum track and deal out some more cards. Of course, people are going to have to ditch some. Well, now we're jumping into another turn, and I've discarded a bunch of cards after reshuffling the deck. The momentum situation, this is kind of interesting. We saw this at the con when I played it against opponents, and I think I'll have the same problem here. The game starts out following a clockwise ordering, well, actually a counterclockwise ordering of the characters on the board, basically. We start over here and work our way around. And then what we saw here was things shifted a little bit, and I don't remember what the ordering ended up, but someone, it ended up staying in the same ordering. Well, now it's reordered so that Lincoln, Southern Democrats, then Douglas, jumping across the board and back. Big deal? Nah, not really, except that you get used to the pattern. It's kind of hard because it stays for a while quite often, I think. It may depend. It's quite possible that people manage to pull polls out early on and get things going and shift things around. But when it's gone, 4 turns as it did here, and I think about the same when I played it the other time, without shaking that basic pattern of a straight counterclockwise up at all, even if you changed who was first, then getting the mixed up turn order, it's kind of a tricky thing. And it's not surprising if people screw it up. Okay, so we shot our way through this 5th turn. We're moving into the very last turn of the game. There were no local polls, or no regional polls for this one, which means nobody locked down any more votes. Just a lot of fighting. You'll see Southern Democrats getting some power here in the Pacific, and even in the Midwest here, because Kansas counts as that. Just grabbing the things that they see as things they can get. Now, of course, Lincoln can go in here and probably win this. He just has to get 2 pieces in there. Likewise, it makes things like this kind of questionable for Douglas, for example. So if he gets a local elections card, he may want to pull out of there and move his points to somewhere that he has a chance of winning, because he has no chance of taking Illinois now, except by removing Lincoln's votes there. There was quite a bit of fighting going on over New York. The Northern Democrats regularly were trouncing Lincoln's points in there. That worked out okay for the Constitutional Unionists. They thought they had a shot at getting in there. Well, they didn't. Lincoln's kind of taken control again, and actually of Maine as well, in sort of a retribution. Anyway, this next turn, there will be no regional election, regional polls. You can't lock down any more states. This turn has to go to the points themselves. And it's a time when, really, to win the game, what you should be doing is counting up your electoral votes. Do you got a chance at that? If not, aim for states. And that's something I'm going to take a little moment to do, even though maybe I didn't do it very well at, say, the con. And mainly it's because, well, it was loud there, etc. Here, I can actually take the time and count up the votes that people have, see what kind of range they're in, and make a comparison. I'll be back in a moment with that. So because this isn't the end of the game, it's just really a rough idea of where people are, what they think they could get. So I look at, and the people who end up with the most are the Republicans. In terms of electoral votes, they have 112. Kind of as a max reach. They're not going to get 150. So let's forget about that. State-wise, I see around 6 to 10 states for them. We'll see how that lashes out, but that's where they have to play. Now, when I look at the Southern Democrats, they're a little lower, 105 electoral votes in play for them, maybe. But they have maybe 14 states because they've concentrated and gotten some of these, into positions in states that aren't quite as expensive in electoral votes. Lincoln's been concentrating in the North, and he didn't really, get the massive states that he wanted. So he's going to have to worry and draw, hopefully get a good hand for him to do well. Southern Democrats have a strong lead on him. When we look at the Constitutional Unionists, they look kind of weak. Their state total is probably around, maybe a little weaker than Lincoln's. The max cap is actually lower, and their votes really, really poor. It looked like they were doing very well at one point, but they never converted these to locked states. And so they've been expending on them continuously, having to keep fighting and defending them. I like that element of the game. The Northern Democrats, on the other hand, well, their votes aren't very good at all at 74, but they have some 11 states. So they're actually in a kind of interesting position where they can, at least in play, because they have this focus in the Midwest, where they have a decent chance of grabbing a number, of states. And if they can convince everybody to kind of go after the Southern Democrats, they have a chance at this. We'll see how it turns out. I've got to deal out the cards, though. Remember, they get a full hand this turn. Things are starting to get nasty. For example, a card that would have been played easily anyway, the secessionist intrigue. Green played it to try to take California over, but every state is important. And so the Southern Democrats played their personal appearance to stop it in California. California is not a valuable state, but the point is, it doesn't matter what the state is, to tell you the truth. It really doesn't. It could be anything. The game is probably going to come down to single states. Anyway, we've been seeing some hard fighting again in New York for no real reason. It's just another state. But a scandal there costs Lincoln more pieces than a scandal somewhere else. So it was worth playing for that. And he recovered from it. Anyway, we're not quite halfway through, right? Onward. Well, a lot of infighting has been going in place, between Douglas trying to take the Midwest, where the Southern Democrats don't even exist. But that's where his strength is, and that's where he can get the additional points. Actions like that, and Greene was playing over in Iowa instead of directly attacking the Southern Democrats. It's a harder fight against the Southern Democrats. They could probably take South Carolina, but beyond that, there's not much that they could really engage in, and even there it was kind of expensive comparatively. So Lincoln's decided to play himself the Mexican crisis, and I rolled the die, and it comes up with Buchanan refusing to take a decisive stand. No shock there, but it's a 50-50 in anything, which means that he can remove any two Northern or Southern Democratic-controlled states, all their PCFs. That's a powerful, powerful situation to put himself in. Now, it's got to be, it can be any states. Of course, it's all pieces, which hurts everyone, but it hurts the person controlling it the most. So what are we going to hit? Well, Southern Democrats, too bad. There goes a lot of points that they've invested. And at least I can play there, which is part of the reasoning for it. Elsewhere, kind of upset at the situation here. See, if I take North Carolina away, that's great and everything, and it's worth a lot, but I can't even compete there. But then again, I probably can't compete there. So I'm going to have to think about that second state. Looks like it's probably going to be either North Carolina or Missouri. North Carolina is kind of cool because I don't get to play there, so I can leave it up to everyone else to get involved. And I'll take all their pieces out of there. All right. And this is the kind of thing why you didn't want to expend your personal appearance too early. Poor Breckinridge. He would have loved to use this, but he used it to protect a single state. This one killed 2 of his states and a lot of electoral votes, which might actually change the balance if, say, the Republicans can get an important electoral state like Pennsylvania. Well, it's time to score the points. The cards have been played. The Constitutional Unionists had the kind of neat position with their advantage of playing last, so that they could slip into Maryland, which is tied. Now, you could say, well, could they tie somewhere else? Kentucky and Missouri don't count because they're strongholds. North Carolina, could they have tied there? That would have taken 10 pieces. They played their cube in a 4-card, giving them 8 pieces. 2 went into Maryland. What if instead of their 8 pieces, they could have put 7? If they went into one of these, they could have put 1 into here. That gives them 7 left. 2, 4. You know, they didn't have enough pieces to push themselves up to another tie. And even in smaller states, the points would just be too high for them to grab a tie all by themselves. They could have done it in New York, but New York doesn't help. It's not covered by their special ability. So instead, they pushed in and took South Carolina with their extra points. They were kind of close there. Well, let's see how it all works out. I don't really know where it's going. The Southern Democrats had a big lead. They took a couple of hits, and the Republicans took hits. I think it's kind of a toss-up right now. I'll allocate the cards and see where they all end up. So we figured out the totals with all the cards laid out and everything. And the Republicans took the most electoral votes at 97. Notice here these little pips are because New Jersey was split between the Republicans and the Southern Democrats. Okay, it's about where we held them, and they actually only have 6 states, which is about the minimum of what we saw they would hit. People were hitting them pretty hard. Northern Democrats, 78 electoral votes, not enough in either case. I mean, nobody's got enough. But not enough to win the election. In fact, the Northern and Southern Democrats together didn't have enough. They had a 146 between them, which means the Southerns have 68. Only 8 states there. And people were thinking, well, maybe the Republicans, or maybe the Northern Democrats had a shot because they're holding a lot of territory, but they're really not quite. They got beaten out in a couple of key places and up here. So state-wise, they aren't holding that many. We are seeing the effect, though, of the strongholds. The only place the Republicans screwed up and didn't get a piece in there. They have 1 piece. They needed 1 more, and they would have locked that up, the Kansas, as one of their advantageous states or voting states. But they didn't do it, and it ended up going for the Southern Democrats. Not enough of a margin for the game, though. Constitutional Unionists, 63 electoral votes, 8 states as well. But then here's the big block, and it was grabbing those southern states and the Northern Democrats helping them do it. Only 68 electoral votes, but 12 states, which is enough to guarantee them the win. And this is something Patrick pointed, the guy who was demonstrating the game for us, pointed out to us at the con was, you're not going to win with electoral votes. But the time we played, the guy playing Douglas actually did win with electoral votes. And it was also my strategy. I thought I was going to slip in with them. Obviously, I did a much, much poorer job of it because someone else managed to do it. But, yeah, you know, focusing on a few key states, the Ohio, the New York, you know, and the fact that one person won all of them in that game when two people were fighting over them. I think that's one of the factors that can come into this, is that you can have a couple of people fighting over them. If one wins that fight, they win the game. But because they're focusing on those, the other two players are saying, well, if neither one wins that fight, one of us is winning because we've got more states and we're fighting a different game. It's hard to play both games at once. That's the point. So if you ignore the electoral, if everybody ignores the electoral, one person may be able to pull it off, right? And likewise, if everybody's going for the electorals, probably people with the states will pull it off. In this case, played kind of with an eye towards the electoral, but an aim towards getting the states. Looking and saying, I got some Northern Democrats down here in the Deep South. That's got to be good, even if they're not huge point value states. But a lot of effort was spent on them. And that's effort that maybe could have won against Lincoln in the Midwest. I don't know. Because, he didn't do too terribly well. But he focused very much on the big states and just couldn't pull the trigger completely on them. And there are a significant number of bigger states that he wasn't able to get, things like Pennsylvania and North Carolina, a couple of the Midwestern states. Oh well, it's an interesting exercise here, and I'll be back with a review in a little bit.